Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your host, Steve, Matt, and Shan Cooper. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
Now, I'm really, really well. I've just been doing a bit of reading on you, and you're famous for feeding your daughter Grace healthy food.
Fucking outrageous.
I mean, this is crazy stuff. You give them things like, wait a second, fruits and vegetables and meats and stuff like what?
It's basically child abuse.
It's terrible. I mean, where do you get off doing that?
I don't know.
Now you got to tell them what you're talking about, Steve.
Right, exactly. You give them what's termed a Paleolithic diet, which is a diet that our ancestors ate for 2.5 million years. And it's a diet that's full of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and legumes, and all the other healthy foods, meats and fishes and these sorts of things. And you started that journey about 5 years ago, is that correct?
Yeah, I probably started my sort of paleo lifestyle about 10 years ago. Was having lots of digestive problems, had some food intolerance testing done, and basically came back allergic to life. Obviously had a lot of leaky gut situation going on and was just reacting to everything. And it was at that point that I realised that I've been following a healthy whole grain diet, eating all of the low fat stuff because that's what we're supposed to do, eat lots of low fat and eat all the healthy whole grains. And I was really bloated all the time and just lots of digestive issues, really unstable moods and all that sort of stuff, just energy fluctuations, was basically just on a carb roller coaster. And started working with a naturopath and went through the process of cutting out all the things that I was reacting to at the time, which was pretty much everything. Like I came back reacting to over 50 things. Like it was a lot, but they were stupid things like, dairy and gluten were in there, but also things like almonds and bananas and like eggs was really high on that list. So there was a lot of gut permeability happening.
Things that you were eating a lot of?
But not even necessarily things like cranberries. I came back reacting to cranberries and that was definitely not something that I was eating a lot of. Yeah. So some stuff, yes, I was eating a lot of, but other stuff, definitely not. So cut out all of those things, did a lot of gut healing, lots of broths and, did lots of supplements to help heal that gut permeability and really sort of started on, I suppose, what we would call a paleo diet, but it was really just more of a whole food diet. So I did cut out dairy completely because I was reacting to whey and casein, and cut out gluten and actually cut out all grains to start off with, just to really do that whole gut healing protocol and clean everything up, because I think I had forgotten what it felt like to feel good. I was just used to feeling a little bit shitty all the time and having, that really big energy spikes and then troughs, digestive problems. So I cut all that stuff out and that's kind of when I probably found the paleo lifestyle. And I was pretty strict paleo for probably about 5 years, I guess. And when I had Grace, I think I'd learned so much more about nutrition in that period of time. I did an ag science degree at uni majoring in animal health. So I learned all about feeding cows grain and corn and soy and all those sorts of things to make them real fat.
Yeah.
Real fat, real fast.
Yeah.
But it didn't really connect to me that maybe that was what was making us real fat, real fast either.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I sort of started doing a paleo sort of template and I just kind of got my health back. Found out what it felt like to feel really good and had really stable energy and stable moods and, my skin was better and my digestion was better and my energy was better and I just felt really good. And it got to a point where I wasn't on a paleo diet. That was just a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
My choice was to eat, fruit and veggies and really good quality proteins and healthy fats and, if I'm going to go out to dinner to an amazing Italian restaurant, well, yeah, I'm just going to have the pasta. I'll have a massive gut ache when I get home and I'll just deal with that. But the next day, my food again is going to be the most nutrient dense stuff that I could eat. So it just makes sense to me when you're trying to firstly grow a human inside your body. It is made up of, you literally are what you eat and that human is made from everything that you are eating. And so the choice was, make a kid out of Cocoa Pops or make a kid out of really good quality food. And so it just was a no-brainer to actually eat real food. And then when Grace was born, obviously, you go through a period of breastfeeding. And then when I decided to introduce solids, it did not make any sense to me that rice cereal would be her first food.
Yeah.
That, you know, food that was so nutrient void that they had to fortify it with things.
Yeah.
And why would I sit down and feed her rice cereal when I could feed her avocado or broccoli or pumpkin or some poached apples, like something that is going to have 100 times more nutrition in it than rice cereal and some junky carb. Like, let's get my kid addicted to junky carbs from her first food.
Yeah.
So I just really focused on real food, and for some reason that's very controversial.
So then they did a bit of an article in the news about how irresponsible that is to feed a child all the great real foods with all of their natural benefits, and including the peels and the husks that are often discarded through processing and everything like, where we find a lot of the nutrients and everything we need to establish our gut and everything like that. And so basically the fact that you didn't have the breast milk from another animal.
No, chose to use my own.
Cow's milk. You used your own, and then when yours ran out, or when that finished, you didn't move on to stealing the milk from another animal, which is looked at as frowned upon. Of course, you should be doing that. Yeah. But even the baby cows stopped drinking. Typically, people call them calves, but I prefer baby cows. And they stopped drinking the milk eventually too. Yeah. But, and then the only other thing really excluded would have been grass seeds. Yeah, I mean, is that what grain is? I mean, so we talk about nuts and seeds are great, but if you feed your kid exclusively nuts and seeds, but you don't feed them the seeds off the top of the grass, the wild grasses, whether it's rice or oat grass and wheat grass, and the little seeds, collect all those, grind all the good stuff off it to collect just the empty calories from the inside to make that into a cereal.
Yeah.
So that's what we exclude, and that's what's bad.
Yeah, and look, for me, it wasn't necessarily about this food's bad and this food's good, because I think that, there is no such thing as a bad food or a good food. There's just food, and there's stuff that's more nutrient dense. So why would I sit the kid down to a bowl of fairly nutrient void carbohydrates when she could be sitting down to a bowl of protein and healthy fats and food-based carbohydrates from fruits and vegetables? There's so much more nutrition in that.
And you said it yourself. In this article, they freaked out because they said, where are they going to get their carbs if they're only eating fruit and vegetables and nuts and seeds, and without the grains and without adding teaspoons of cane sugar? Where are they going to get their carbs?
Absolutely.
I don't want to mention, I won't mention any names, but there was a qualified dietitian there who said, where is she going to be getting her carbohydrate intake from, not knowing the carbohydrates come from fruits, vegetables, and all the nuts and seeds and all those sorts of things. That's disturbing to me, because there's plenty of carbohydrates in those things. And if we go back to the, get a bit of science here, we know that for millions of years, that's what all kids ate. It's only recently we've started to add McDonald's and other animals' uddered milk, and we didn't hunt down and kill a bowl of wheat. This is not foods that we never encountered for millions of years, only now.
That's my kind of confrontation. I was actually sitting there thinking,
exactly. And it makes news that you're eating what people have done for millions of years. Yeah. It's like, I'm breathing now. They make the news.
But you don't read, you mentioned before, you don't see the news articles on the lady that exclusively feeds her children soft drinks and McDonald's and all that sort of bad food, because to say no to a child all the time would be classed as child abuse, I'm assuming. It'd be a sad kid, but sometimes you've got to do the tough decisions. And we were talking earlier about picking the battles and trying to work out what's the most important. But if you consider that in those, when a child's born, before they're born, they're sterile. They've never seen a bug. They've got no gut lining. Their gut wall is so permeable. You were just saying prior to your pregnancy and prior to that, you were struggling with a leaky gut wall. You worked out that if we removed such things as gluten, and if anyone says, gluten, these glutards don't know what they're talking about and that sort of stuff, if you actually look at, if you just put it into one of the medical journal databases and just write gluten and then type in a word like zonulin, which is a cool word to type in anyway. Zonulin's a very cool word. It's ZONULIN, but it's actually the chemical responsible that gluten even if you're not gluten intolerant or allergic, gluten will activate zonulin to create a leaky gut wall. And then you could look for these things called tight junction proteins, which is that just makes the permeability. And we're not even talking about stripping your gut wall through ulcerative colitis. We're talking about just opening up these pores to allow these really hard to digest peptides such as gluten and casein to enter so that we can use them as a source of nutrients. Even does it to the brain, which is where we get the behavioural stuff. Then when you get a leaky gut wall, all the other food as well, before it's digested, can sneak through. And then it registers as an intolerance because the immune system's got to get... Next thing, you're intolerant to 50 foods because you've got a leaky gut wall and stuff sneaking through, trigger an immune reaction for do it. Now, then you're thinking, I'm going to have a baby. The baby's going to be born with no gut wall at all. I'm not going to introduce the foods that in mum created a leaky gut wall. You're going to be what made sense, what worked for you. You'd be thinking it's going to be the same for the kid. And then... with that ability to establish a very healthy microbiome, by the ages of 2, they should have established a good healthy microbiome with good healthy gut wall. That's all coming from real food.
Absolutely.
The fibre and the modbiotic polyphenol compounds that's in the fibre is actually the most important thing.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about paleo, this is what bugs the hell out of me with when people call a diet something. Because... what happens is, I think the naming of the diet is what turns it bad. Because then people go, I'm going to write a book on this and I'm going to create a program. I'm going to then do it all just to sell a shitload of products. Because if I write paleo on the packet, then it makes it paleo.
But also it seems dogmatic as well. And, you know, I think like you were talking about the leaky gut and the gut permeability of these babies, there's so much research now to show that their guts don't actually... seal back up until they're about 2. So, Grace, after 2, I tried her with some dairy to see how she would go. And she's fine with dairy. So, we do butter at home and she's fine with it. She's not into milk. She doesn't like yogurt, but she'll have some cheese every now and again. But that's not the first thing she's getting offered. The first thing she's getting offered is vegetables and fruit and good quality protein and healthy fats. And if you want a little bit of cheese after that, cool, that's fine. But it's going to be organic and it is going to be the best quality I can find because we are what we eat, but we also are what they ate. And knowing what I know about how we feed commercial cows, I want a cow that's been eating grass and actually has some beautiful nutrients in its, milk so that we can make healthy cheese out of it. And so, we're not, I would not say that I am strict paleo anymore. There's certain things that we do. So I'll cook rice in bone broth, but I'll make sure that I soak my rice first and then we cook it in broth and I'll let it cool so that we're creating resistant starch and then we'll reheat it. So we're creating foods that have diversity as well because that's really important. But that, as a, 18-month-old baby who is just learning how to digest food and, create her own microbiome, a bowl of rice is not what she needs when she could be eating a bowl of vegetables. And then, Grace is a really good eater. She is an adventurous eater. She eats lots of different veggies and she's like any kid. She will go through phases of, I don't like that. At the moment, she doesn't like bananas and she doesn't like zucchini. And let's be honest, what kid likes zucchini? But she will eat potatoes, she will eat tomatoes. She loves pickled radishes. She loves onions. She loves garlic. She will eat so many different foods that so many kids won't eat because that's what she was introduced to and that's what's normal. And also, that's what we're eating. I'm not a short order cook and at the end of the day, there is no such...
What do you mean?
I'm not cooking 7 meals for everybody in the house. This is what's for dinner. So there's no such thing as kids' food and adults' food. There's food and it's cooked appropriately for the amount of teeth you have in your head. So if you're a baby with 2 teeth, then obviously the lamb we're having for dinner is going to be slow cooked to the point where you can just put it in your mouth and it disintegrates. Or you might have a mash or a puree that you can, jam with a spoon and eat it. But at the end of the day, it's the same as what I've got on my plate. It's just cooked appropriately for you. And I think it's the job of the parents to choose what. I will choose what you eat. And it is not going to be mac and chees because what kid isn't going to eat that? Given the choice, what kid isn't going to go, mac and cheese? But you can choose if you eat kids aren't really in the habit of starving themselves.
Yeah.
And how much you eat and what of that plate. Like, I'm going to put a plate of food in front of you and I'm happy with all the food choices on that plate.
Yeah.
You can decide what you feel like eating today.
Is that
because
right? Yeah.
kids are the same as us. Some days you don't feel like salad. You don't feel like you want something warm and
2 days in a row, what they loved yesterday, they don't like today.
No, they're fickle.
And then by tomorrow, it's like, that is a thing I've never liked.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I hate that. Why would you even put that on my plate? But try it again next week.
And
they're
love
like,
it.
oh, no, I love tomatoes, Mum.
Yeah.
Why didn't you buy tomatoes? I love tomatoes.
So you just said that, so you'll let the kids follow their intuition a fair bit in regards to how much to eat?
Absolutely.
So in regards to, if they're saying I don't feel like eating those foods, you're not the sort of person that would say you got to finish that plate. We don't waste food in this house.
And you know what?
Yeah.
I am big on food waste. I hate food waste.
Yeah,
it
yeah,
does
yeah.
my head in.
Yeah, same.
But I grew up always having to eat everything on my plate.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was a really bad habit for me to get into.
I think so too.
Got into a point of overeating so much because I felt like I had to eat everything on my plate. So I don't make Grace eat everything on her plate. When she says she's full, that's cool, we're full. Firstly, don't ask me for anything else after dinner because if you're full, you're done.
Yeah.
But I won't waste that food. Like if she's half eaten her dinner, that's cool. I'm going to chuck it in the fridge and either I'm going to rehash that for lunch tomorrow because it's the same food I was eating for dinner. Or I'll give it to her again tomorrow night for dinner.
Yeah. Well, that's a strategy we were using with our boys. It's like, well, if you're not going to eat it now, we just put it in. You can have it for breakfast or lunch or dinner or tomorrow until it's gone.
I'm going to crack a few eggs on top of it and tomorrow morning that's going to be my breakfast.
But it's that whole debate, like trying to teach, when you're a parent, man, I just couldn't talk it. When you're a parent, there's so many lessons you're trying to teach the children. Like you're trying to teach them everything from bloody doing their shoelaces up to how to ask things properly, how to behave or how to, work, use knife and fork so we can go out to dinner sometime somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, so many things that we're trying to do and you've got to really pick those battles. Having that ability to allow them to use their intuition as how much they eat in regards to not eating. Yeah. My next question was overeating. I mean, how do we manage that? Do you let them control that to a certain degree as well and eat as much as they like to a certain degree, but not the treats? As long as it's healthy food, they don't have to watch the calories.
If you fill your plate with, some veggies, some good quality fats, and some protein, no kid's going to overeat that.
Yeah.
They're going to eat until they're full, and then they're going to go, I'm good.
Yeah.
But Grace is probably even the same. Like if I put a big fruit platter out for her, I probably wouldn't just give her a plate of fruit. I would put some nuts on there or something in there that's got some healthy fats in there and a little bit of protein to help with that satiety. But again, she will sit there and she might eat 3 or 4 strawberries and then kind of go, done.
See, we had a very cool podcast. Sorry, Steve, I will let you talk again soon.
That's right.
I get right into this.
This is fascinating.
We did a podcast the other day with a dude from Precision Nutrition.
I had it.
Yeah, he said some really fascinating stuff in regards to adults and weight loss. One of the things that he mentioned was a big problem was eating too fast.
Yeah.
Man, you know what I do with my kids? It's just like, hurry up, eat your food. I'm sitting there the whole time going, and then we actually have a game, winner, chicken dinner, like whoever nailed their dinner first. And I'm sitting there going, I'm like, oh my gosh, like listening to these podcasts about how to make a fat adult, and I'm teaching these things to my kids.
Yeah. Don't you just hoover it down.
Yeah.
Oh, it's funny, eh? And then when I was looking at calories, I've never, my training, naturopathic, we never talked too much about calories. We knew that was a thing. And you don't want to eat too many of them or you get bigger. And if, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Calorie deficit, calorie surplus. So I had a quick gander before the podcast of how much, for our American listeners, a gander is a male goose or a quick look. The children, for my kids, they're like 5, 6, 7. I can't remember how old they are. No, I've only got
somewhere
2.
in that bracket.
No, I've only got 2 and I've listed 3
5 and
age
6,
groups.
I think, aren't they?
Shut the hell up, Steve.
I know
You're trying to pretend he knows. It's,
5 and 6.
I'd be impressed if you can remember anyway. The calories that like an adult would consume is pretty much the same recommended calories for a child. So calories in, calories out. So
but also what are the calories? So let's look at an apple. There's 100 calories in an apple. There's 100 calories in a fun-sized Snickers bar.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, but they're going to they're going to act completely different metabolically in your body. One of them is going to make you off your face and you're going to have a massive blood sugar spike. You're going to crash on the other side and you're just going to be a complete asshole of a kid.
Yep.
On the other hand, you're getting an apple that has fiber and it has micronutrients and it has, all of this stuff in it.
Yep.
And by the time you actually eat that apple, by the time you chomp through all the skin and eat everything,
burn.
you're going to be feeling satiated and you probably would have had enough. Whereas in that same time, you probably would have eaten 17 fun-sized Snickers.
And this is one of my biggest pet hates. We have laws around the world that will stop us from educating people on the health benefits of food. Like, we basically can't talk about any functional aspects of food without it overlapping onto a therapeutic claim. Because the problem is, they look at things like prevention. General support in the nutrients we need to build something or maintain a system, all that sort of stuff is now looked at as therapeutic claims. People have totally forgotten that food is full of not just macronutrients and potential allergens that are going to make us sick. Because what's happened now, because they tried to have taken away any ability to talk about the positive aspects of food, we're left talking about macros and allergies, which is basically manage your macros and avoid anything you're potentially allergic. So it's all avoid, it's very negative. And then we create, as a naturopath or a dietitian or whatever we are, we create these lists of avoid lists. However, if we were allowed to talk about the benefits of the food, the functional aspects, we would be talking about add this compound into your diet. Look for foods that contain this and consume more of that. And the problem is what the end result is exactly what you said. I could actually now be so trained up on protein, carb and fat that I can now turn around a bottle and compare the information provided, and I could say that, okay, we've got 50 grams of carbs from this thing of Coke. I can get 50 grams out of my freshly squeezed juice or my punnet of bloody fruit or whatever. It's the same. Because carbs are bad, so this is bad, this is bad. And that's the problem, is like, can you just imagine how different everything would be if we walked into a shopping centre and people were allowed to tell people the benefits of the food. Everyone can. It's an even playing field. Coca-Cola, you can too. You can tell us about the health benefits of your beverage at the same time as someone else. So imagine going through the grocery section. Broccoli can do all these things. Turmeric, fresh turmeric does all this. We can go through and say all of these amazing things about the food and why we should eat them and how much fiber's in them, how much nutrients. It contains these potential compounds, these vitamins that we need for these things. Imagine how different the shopping experience would be when the outside of the shop actually had some advertising on it. And instead of just the aisles. Because you can go through the health food aisle and there'll be packaged foods with ticks and stars and all sorts of stuff. But the actual food around the outside, we're not allowed to talk to people about and say, this is how you make it up. They'll go through and get a sauce flavoured with all the stuff that you can get around the outside that is actually functional. You know what I mean? Like, this
hasn't been pasteurised and heat treated to within an inch of its life and is actually a dead food now.
Absolutely amazing. And we've got that star rating thing, but there's some flaws in that, of course. They only measure certain macros and you can pop it into the computer and it gives you a star rating.
And if it's got saturated fat, then to hell with it.
It's gone. And it's weird because, of course, saturated fat comes in many different forms. The short-chain saturated fatty acids, you mentioned fruit before, they're formed in the gut as butyric acid, extraordinarily healthy for the colon. And that's a saturated fat. And therefore it's, lose all the stars. So,
but every type of fat contains all different types of fat.
Of course they do,
So, just because it's a saturated fat, it also contains other types of fats as well. And just because it's not a saturated fat doesn't mean it doesn't contain some saturated fat.
Or when they do the things that, we only fry this in oil that doesn't contain cholesterol. It's just like, well, that's stupid. We're going to make the cholesterol, from eating too much sugar, probably.
Like, of course, saturated fat's found a lot in avocado, you mentioned before, because that's how it stays firm at a warmer temperature. And that's not bad.
No.
You can't say, those sort of saturated fats, the shorter chain ones, are extraordinarily healthy. And I wanted to ask you, you got these great ideas about, better, and I think every parent wants their child to eat better, we'll just assume that. So have you got any? Because I know you do workshops around the place. I was cyber stalking you yesterday. Is that what she does? Okay, And
He does that, eh?
yeah, I do.
He
that
sits at his
anyway.
computer going,
Yeah.
like no one's even there. Suddenly you walk in the room, he's there by himself. It's like, oh, he's cyber stalking someone again.
Because you do these great workshops, and I looked at the photos of the food you guys produce, and it looks gorgeous, looks tasty. There was bits that I could swear was just chocolate.
Yeah.
So have you got any tips about what to the average parents out there about ways to introduce some healthy things? You don't have to go the whole hog, but introducing some healthy aspects to a normal diet.
And I think that's really important, is don't let perfect get in the way of good.
That's
just because you can't have, what you deem or I deem or whoever deems as the perfect diet, that doesn't mean to hell with it and let's just go with everything out of a packet. Because let's be honest, sometimes we buy things that are in a packet and I will read the ingredients and I will work out, do I recognise those ingredients? Is there numbers in there that I don't recognise? Is there artificial colours, flavours, preservatives? And I will make an educated choice on whether that is going to be a product that I will purchase or not. I think the best thing we can do is start our kids early, because it is much easier to get a baby who doesn't have any preconceived palate. It doesn't have an idea about what it wants to eat. If the first things you're introducing are savoury foods and vegetables and avocado and things like that, they're just going to learn that is what food is. Whereas if you just start them on rice cereal and they eat pasta and cheese, and you're kind of creating these highly palatable things because you think, oh, my kid won't like broccoli. Mate, cook it in a bit of butter and put a little bit of salt on it. Yeah. Everything tastes delicious cooked in butter, doesn't it?
Then we went to a flash Japanese restaurant, and that's all they were doing on the barbecue plate was throwing butter and salt and pepper, teppanyaki or something.
Absolutely.
I do this at home.
Delicious.
Throw it everywhere.
I think you got to start them really young, because it's much easier to get a baby to start eating vegetables than it is to get a toddler who blows up about the fact that you cut their apple the wrong way, or a 5 or a 6 year old, or even worse, a 10 or a 12-year-old who has had 10 or 12 years of less than optimal food choices, and now all of a sudden you're putting a plate of broccoli in front of them. They are going to go, fuck no.
Yeah.
And you can totally understand that. Yeah. But for that kid, it's not going to be, okay, sorry, all of a sudden all we eat is broccoli. But I would suggest trying to do things that add a little bit more nutrients to your food. So if you're going to cook rice, then cook it in some bone broth and let it cool first, and then reheat it. So you've got rice that tastes just like rice. It probably actually tastes better because it's been cooked in broth and it's got loads more nutrients in there. You're getting some gut healing in there. You've got resistant starch. So the kid's still getting the rice on their plate that they want, but you've added nutrients to something that was probably fairly nutrient void to start off with. Yeah. And then just introduce things. They say kids have got to try things 7 times before they decide if they like it or not. And we know how fickle kids are. Yeah. They like something this week, next week they don't like it. That's not to say they're not going to like it in a month's time. So I think it's the parents' job to give them variety and give them colour and put different things on their plate and work out how we encourage our kids to just try things. Yep. Because whenever I make something for Grace that she hasn't had before, I'll say, hey, mate, just give it a try. If you don't like it, that's okay. But it's really important for us to try new things because what if we do like it? And so she'll try something and she'll either say, yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. Or she'll say, no, I don't like it. I'm like, cool. Yeah. That's not the last time I'm trying that food. She will get it again, and it might not be tomorrow, but maybe next week I might try that same food again and I'll try it a different way. Maybe instead of cooking the broccoli with some butter, I'm going to roast it in some olive oil and make crunchy broccoli and see if, is that going to fly? And it might even be a case for those super fussy kids, maybe they just love spaghetti bolognese and that's where we're going with it. Okay, cool. How about instead of shitty white pasta, let's go with some buckwheat pasta or something that's actually got a little bit more nutrients in there. Let's cook the pasta in broth and add a bit more nutrients in there.
It's a really good idea, that cooking in broth. Yeah.
Something like bolognese, I mean, it just tastes like tomato and mince. You could put shit tons of veggies in there, grate some zucchini in there, grate some broccoli stalks in there.
And blend it all back up after it to make it full mush.
Absolutely.
That's our secret with spaghetti.
And if you're making like homemade pizzas, like if the kids love pizzas, great. Yeah. make homemade pizza bases. They don't take
What do you
very
make
long.
them out of? Like, do you do anything in particular, or just any particular flours or anything?
I usually do.
You're not mashing cauliflower or anything, are you?
Seriously. You know what? When I was hardcore paleo, I was like, totally, cauliflower pizzas are so good. They're not good. They're shit.
Yeah,
it's
they're cauliflower pizza, yeah.
You know, like it doesn't taste terrible, but
And
it's
they
not
even look
pizza.
like, little cauliflowers even look like little farts.
It's
That's
not.
why they smell like them and taste like
They
them.
totally smell like fart.
Hey, I like cauliflower rice you get from the freezer and that
It's
sort of
really
thing.
good.
It's
It's a really good option. And that sort of thing, you can make cauliflower rice. And if you're making fried rice for the kids, you do half normal rice and whack a bit of cauliflower rice in there.
Yeah.
They will not know the difference. Whack a bit of tamari or coconut aminos or something on there, plus bacon, because bacon makes everything taste delicious.
It does. I noticed that.
But that sort of thing, you can sneak some cauliflower rice in there. They're sneaking extra veggies in there.
Yeah.
And so if you're making like pizza-based sauce, I would just get your tomato paste, but you can also blend up in there like half a zucchini, some spinach. Tomato paste has got such a strong colour.
Yeah.
You put it on the base of a pizza, they don't know they've just got 6 serves of veggies in that.
Oh, I got to mention this recipe I forgot to mention the other week because we're just talking about it, kind of. And I printed it off, and the sofrito. We're talking about the calories in, calories out. And they did this one cool study where they put these people in a calorie deficit, and they made up this thing called sofrito. But all it was tomatoes, garlic, onion, water, capsicum, just blended up like a tomato sauce. And when they added that into the diet, the people in a calorie deficit didn't go into starvation mode. It maintained their metabolism by maintaining some bloody thing, microbiome and that sort of stuff. But calorie matched and everything. It just maintained that metabolism. My son Alfie's designed his favourite soup, which is basically that. But it's basically like allowed him to invent his own by just putting those same ingredients around. One thing I noticed too, when you're talking about the make them try it, there's an interesting fact that a lot of parents should be aware of. In nature, a lot of the poisons that we would eat off trees and out of the ground and that sort of stuff are very bitter.
Yep.
And often they come in the berries and the flowers and the leaves. The same stuff we're feeding them as vegetables, all right, and herbs and spices. So children are a little bit more sensitive to bitter flavours that are found in those foods until their body accepts that food.
Yeah.
So it's really important to do is to give them a bit to try often, because once their body realises that this bit of compound is acceptable, but not only acceptable, it's actually beneficial in my case. Yeah. And what's crazy, a lot of these compounds that we find have antioxidant benefits and activate detoxification actually have tiny levels of these poisons in them. And it's actually the body responding to this poison by increasing detox or increasing antioxidant defense is actually one of the ways they work. So it's important to just keep trying things, but also then on that mechanism, if you were to just go in and force that child to eat mega doses of something once off, it may not even be the best.
No.
So intuition is a very powerful tool.
And let them try it in different ways too. Like G does not like capsicum when it's cooked, but would eat a capsicum like an apple when it's raw. So and she also doesn't like snow peas or beans or things like that cooked, but we'll sit there and go out into the garden and just eat raw snow peas or eat basil straight off the plant, but doesn't like it to be cooked. So it could be a textural thing for kids as well. So just because they say no to something cooked in a certain way, it doesn't mean no forever. But I think we just got to keep offering them stuff. And there's always ways to sneak veggies in. Like if your kids love smoothies and you're going to make like a chocolate and banana smoothie for them and that's going to be their breakfast, well, let's sneak some protein in there. Let's put some collagen in there, hair, skin, nails, gut, joints, all that jazz. But also you're going to add some protein. You could add half a zucchini in there. It tastes like nothing. You can peel it
I've never
first.
thought of putting a zucchini in a milkshake.
Life
My
does.
boys hate zucchini.
Peel it
hate it.
first.
That's
Like
the one
you can
thing
pretty
that-
much peel it and no one will ever see a speck of green. Even cauliflower, like
genius.
cooked and cooled cauliflower that's frozen, you could add, and not like a lot. It doesn't need to be a cauliflower smoothie because that's disgusting.
It would be. It's fart. It's cauliflower's a
It
fart.
smell like fart, But even like a little floret of cauliflower in a smoothie that's got chocolate, like cacao and bananas in it, it's just, you put banana in a smoothie, everything tastes like banana. Like, you could actually get that little bit of extra nutrition in there without them even knowing. And, instead of just giving them banana and milk, add some collagen in there for protein, add some healthy fats in there. So whether that's in the form of a handful of cashews or some cashew butter or almond butter or something like that that's going to add some fats, or make it on coconut milk.
Yeah.
So these kids are getting some extra calories in there and some really good quality fats to help their brains.
So a milkshake we make for my boys, and they absolutely love it. So we use our No Way.
Yep.
The boys just love it. And there's a couple other little ones I'm experimenting with at the moment on the children. If they survive, I'll try it. But typically, we even get the zinc magnesium capsules that we make. We put them in there. The Immuno-Rx, the resilience, actually tastes quite nice. Water. You know, you can hide that sort of stuff through. So most of that goes into my boys' milkshakes most days. The gut rights, we throw those in. So they're the sort of things that we give to the boys. I'll tell you something interesting. I mentioned it earlier. So I got 2 boys there at 1 year and 3 weeks apart. And so really close, best friends. Pretty much grew up together, eating the same foods. So my wife is half Vietnamese, half English and Welsh and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, that's probably more half. I said 3 halves. And so
3 halves.
Yeah, that justifies
Been
my
doing
comments.
maths
That justifies my comments earlier regarding calories. But and then I'm half like Jewish German on one side and then Pommy on the other side or something. So our kids are a nice mix up of the gene pool. They respond very differently to absolutely everything in life. So I got one boy that's blonde hair, blue eyes, sweet as pie. I got the other kid that thinks he's a ninja. He's got the dark hair and the dark eyes and never sits still, runs around like a madman. Yeah. It's a very strange, the fact that they are exactly opposite in every way. So it's almost like there was a bucket that they could pick from. You get that nose, you get the other nose, you get this. Their food cravings are exactly the opposite, yet we feed them much the same foods.
Yeah.
One boy struggles with metabolism and wants to hold all that energy and not burn it, like even to the fact that trying to get him up and going, he's like, oh, I ate, I'm so tired.
Does he have more of a carb preference?
Yes, and craves the carbs. The other kid is paleo. He just constantly
wants meat.
And he never sits still. He's constantly moving.
Yeah.
And he gets skinnier and skinnier, and the other one's preserving and holding on to the energy.
Yeah.
So in that sort of instance, what do we do? What would you recommend? Would we then look at giving one boy more calories or the other boy less calories, or would we then? It's not a calorie thing, is it? We got to change their body and the way their body.
But Matt, it's not really any different to you and I.
Yeah.
They're 2 separate people. Just because they're from the same family doesn't mean that they should be the same. Like, we're different. We could eat exactly the same thing every single day, do exactly the same exercise every single day, and our bodies would respond differently because that's just who we are. That's our genetic makeup. And it can be a lot to do with their personalities too. Like, I'm a bit more of a person who's a bit more high strung, and I'm a bit more constantly running on adrenaline.
Yep.
So my body's naturally just in that state of constant burn because of just who I am.
Yep.
Whereas someone else might just be way more chilled. Their body is so much more relaxed and they're just not in that constant state of burn.
So it's really an intuitive thing, huh? And we got to really trust our kids' intuition to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But then pull them up on those particular things that they have the unreasonable cravings for.
And I think that's where it comes back to you decide what, they decide how much.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Depends whether it's a good food, like you're saying earlier. If we got the right foods, it's all good and healthy, it's in the right proportions, and if you eat all that, we know you're cool.
Absolutely.
Pizza night, we're limiting it to this. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? I think kids need to learn what it feels like to overeat as well.
Yeah.
Because they're not stupid. They'll eat too much and kind of go, oh man. Like G goes to a kid's party and I'm not the parent who's coming, no, you can't have anything like plate. I bought kale chips.
Yeah.
Because what sort of asshole parent are you? No, I'm just not doing that. And she's at an age now where she's in prep, she's going to school, she goes to kids' parties, and I'm like, mate, fill your boots.
Yeah.
She will come home, and last weekend was a perfect example. She was like, went nuts. And she normally doesn't do that at parties. She'll normally have a little bit of this. She'll have a piece of cake and she'll eat like a bite of icing and then she'll just leave the cake and off she goes. She's much more going to go to like the corn chips or crackers and cheese. That's the sort of direction she would normally go in. But she, I don't know, for some reason, this kid party on the weekend hit it hard and ended up with her head in the toilet. Like she was like an 18-year-old who had just gone way too hard. And she came home and she was like, I felt really sick. I had way too much party food and I felt really sick. And I was like, yeah, cool. That's okay, mate. I said, well, what we'll do is we'll make sure that the next thing we have, we've got lots of really good quality, healthy food just to make sure that your microbes are happy, because she knows all about her microbes, and she has a cool book called Mandy Microbe. Oh, yeah, but Kale wrote a book called Mandy Microbes, Big Gut Adventures.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it's all about Mandy Microbe, and she meets her friends called Butyrate and all of these sorts of things.
That's cool.
And her host, the kid who she lives in, goes to this party and eats lots of party food, and all the candies come and take over the gut, and Mandy Microbe's left there, you know, with all of these candies taking over the gut, making a mess in the gut, trashing everything and not making, and the kid feels sick and he doesn't feel very good and he's not feeling healthy and he's tired and all the rest of it.
That's so cool.
And she has to go and find all of her healthy microbe friends, and you know, she has a conversation with the brain, and the brain says to her, what we need to do is we need to tell little boy, whose name is, let's call him Bill, that he needs to tell his mum to go and get lots of healthy food.
Get your shit together,
and
Bill.
then that will get all of the healthy microbes back.
Wow.
So she often talks about her microbes.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
I love
it's
that.
a really good book.
What a great little book.
Yeah.
And kids get into like the caterpillar book as a kid and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, what a terrific idea, because they need to know about microbes. There's loads of microbes, more microbes than cells in their body, so they might as well learn about them.
Yeah.
Look, I want to ask you about your personal history, because how you got all this started. You know, 5 years ago, you started the paleo program. You felt better within a week. Obviously, you talked about your skin and that sort of thing. What was the clincher for you? Like, what was the like, you didn't feel, you weren't dying of a disease, but what was the clincher that turned you into saying, hang on, I'm going to eat healthy now? What was that turning point for you?
I think for me, it was blood sugar regulation. Was the thing I noticed really, really quickly. So I was somebody who all through uni, I've always been super active and been into lots of sports and things like that all through uni. I would sit there in my lectures and down a packet of Allen's Party Mix easily, just down the hatch. An hour later, I am crashed. I'm like dying.
Were you always lean
so
like
tired.
you are? Were you always one of them people who eat whatever you like and not put on the weight? Or no?
Yeah, to a point.
Yeah.
But I feel like now my body's at a point where it maintains itself, like maintains its muscle mass and lean body mass so much more easily. Like I train way less than I have ever trained.
Yeah, okay.
And I probably eat more than I've ever eaten, but I'm eating the right types of food where my body just is in a good state of equilibrium, and it's not a struggle or a challenge.
Yep.
And I feel like I'm leaner than I was ever when I was, running 10 or 15 Ks a day, plus doing a gym session, plus doing, an hour of martial arts and flogging myself.
Yeah.
But because I was eating so many carbohydrates, like I was eating so much processed sugar because it was fat-free. Or I was eating, heaps of like fat-free yogurt. And so I would sit there at lunchtime and have a massive thing of like all this chopped up fruit with fat-free yogurt on it, thinking, I am so health right now.
You said you ate a kilo of it in your article or something.
Yeah,
That's
so
extraordinary
much. Like I would eat so much. And then I could never work out why I was doing, like I'm so healthy. I'm doing so much right here. But then an hour later, after eating all of this fruit and yogurt, I would be bloated and I would be uncomfortable and I would be hangry. Like my blood sugar was all over the place. And it was like I constantly needed to eat more sugar to just stabilize that. So for me, cutting out all of those processed carbohydrates, I noticed my blood sugar regulation was probably the main thing I noticed and the first thing I noticed. I was one of those people who could not go anywhere without snacks. Like if we were going anywhere and it was going to be for more than 2 hours, I needed to make sure I had snacks. Otherwise I would probably want to cry because I would be so hungry and so low in blood sugar because I was constantly jacked on these processed carbs all the time. So for me, that was the main thing I noticed was blood sugar regulation.
What was the skin? Was it acne? Or what happened with the skin?
See, I never had acne, but I did get like a bit of rosacea and I don't know, I just... Yeah, for me it was mainly a lot of bloating and gut stuff and just really bad, blood sugar regulation. Wow. And I think I just got used to that feeling a bit shitty all the time and, always feeling like a little bit constipated or, always having bloating or having that 3 o'clock in the afternoon slump. And I think you just get used to that being your normal, that you don't actually realise that is not normal. Just because it's common, it's not normal. But I think people get used to just feeling a little bit shitty all the time because they don't know what it's like to feel great. So I think for me, you know, following that whole foods lifestyle, really the first thing I noticed really quickly was my blood sugar regulation. But it was really hard. Like, it was a really hard transition to go from healthy whole grains and all of the low fat to eating fat and thinking, like, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get so fat.
Yeah.
I'm eating, you know, all of these nuts and seeds, and I'm eating the fat on my meat because it's, you know, organic, and I'm eating coconut oil and all this sort of stuff, and just thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get real fat any second now. I'm going to get really, really fat.
Yeah.
But
what were the first things you took out?
Dairy.
Then like bread.
Dairy and processed sugar. I'm a pretty type A personality. When I decide, I'm all in.
Yeah, okay.
So for me, it's not like I'm going to ease into this. I'm like, one day I decided, that's it, it's out. The next day it's out.
Yeah, right.
So I'm an all or nothing sort of person, and I'm less like that now.
Yeah.
But initially at the time, and I think because I was, you know, having my own health crisis at the time, it kind of had to be all or nothing for me, because I was reacting to so many things. It wasn't like, well, it's okay, you can have a little bit of dairy, because a little bit of dairy I reacted to really badly, as much as I would to a lot of dairy.
Yeah.
So I went kind of all the way or nothing at all. But for me, I cut out all grains, all dairy, and all processed foods. And I was pretty strict on that for, I reckon, about 3 years. I was
But when you say you cut out grains,
paleo.
but so nuts, seeds, legumes still in?
Nuts and seeds, I didn't do legumes.
Yeah.
And actually,
So
I was
that's what
even
spins me
like,
out.
I was mental at the time. No, I
glad
was
you
even,
sorted that.
but I think I was so like, okay, I feel good. So if I want to feel better, I've got to paleo harder. And I think, you know, that's one of those things, you know, I think people do it with keto and all that sort of stuff. If it's not working, or it's working a little bit, I'll do it harder. And I wouldn't even eat white potatoes. I was like, they are the devil's food. Can only do sweet potatoes.
Yep.
And, you know, that served me for a time. It helped me get my body back into a state of equilibrium and feeling good. And then I started to reintroduce things and work out how I felt. So, you know, if I have a gluten-free grain like quinoa, how do I feel? To be honest, not that great.
Yeah.
But rice, I do fine with rice.
Yeah, right.
White potatoes, bring them on.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And like I said, you know, if I'm going to go out for dinner to an amazing Italian restaurant where they hand make their own pasta and, you know, they make their own cheese, mate, give me the cheese platter and the pasta. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And I'll be rolling around the floor probably in pain and
Tell you something
really
not to do.
uncomfortable.
Don't do what I did. I'm socially weird in a lot of situations.
Just socially, or?
Well, typically when I'm not alone.
Yes.
When I'm alone, I seem to be fine with this shit that I get up to. But with other people, they question me. But we're at this restaurant, and they come out, and the waiter come out and said, "Oh, we got our what is that, homemade bread rolls? Here's our homemade bread." And I'm just like, I was genuinely impressed. I said, "You guys work in a restaurant all day, and then go home and make your bread." Like, and then this bloke's like,
Dad joke.
No, but I was genuinely serious about this thing. And this bloke's just sitting there, no, we make it here. And everyone else, it was very confusing at the time, but it turned out to be restaurant-made bread.
They need to readjust the way they
They
speak.
need
Yeah.
Sell it
I
differently.
was genuinely impressed at his work ethic for a bit.
Oh, it's crazy. I'd love to know about your reaction to these articles that, you know, there's words like weird, sinister, or crazy about it, and all this sort of stuff that goes through it. What sort of feedback have you had? Has it been positive, negative mixture?
You know what? When that Kids Spot wrote the first article, and that was when G was about 18 months old. And I remember seeing that article come out, and they used some sort of ridiculous clickbait headline like "the baby that's never had carbs" or something like that. That was just
never had sugar.
so ridiculous. And so, of course, all of these keyboard warriors on Facebook have just gotten on, and there was thousands and thousands and thousands of comments, and mostly people who hadn't even read the article.
Yeah.
Because the article actually was quite balanced and mostly truthful. Like, they had actually not presented me as a crazy person. They had presented me as a fairly well-balanced human who was just trying to do the best they could for their kid. But these keyboard warriors would get on and just hurl abuse at me and tell me what a terrible person I was and a terrible mum. So when that first came out, I was seriously rocking in a corner. Like, I was
Oh, really?
in tears, rocking in a corner, just thinking, what the hell? Like, am I actually a terrible person? Am I damaging my child here? And just feeling so upset that people would say such mean things about someone they didn't even know. And then the Daily Mail picked it up. And so then they, did another spin on it and used a different ridiculous headline. It has been in so many countries now, and it's still, like 4 years on, I will still get at least once a month, someone will send me a message on Instagram. Oh, I just saw an article about you feeding your kid, a real food diet on whatever platform they saw it on. And I don't know, now I don't look. I just don't even look. Like I just think, oh, you know what? If people are interested enough that they want to come and actually follow me on social media and actually see what I feed my kid day to day and, all that sort of stuff.
How old your kid is now.
Yeah, absolutely.
5.
Yeah. And also, like, if you look at the baby photos of it, that kid is well covered. Like, she is not fading away.
Yeah, she looks good.
She's all
healthy.
cheeks and, there was no way that I was malnourishing the kid.
No.
No, there's more modern. I just printed one out, but there's some other ones where she's, Grace is about 4 or 5. She looks about 4 or 5 in the photo.
Yeah.
She looks terrific.
But she's tall. Like, she is a really big kid for her age, actually. She's a full head, like, taller than any other kid in her class. And I'm not tall. Her dad's not tall.
Yeah, right.
So I reckon she's probably just going to stop growing now and she'll never grow again and she'll actually just be an average height kid. But, yeah, I think, look, there are people who are going to judge hard, and I think that says a lot more about them than it does about me. I think a lot of the time, particularly as parents, we feel so judged. We're like trying to do everyone. I don't doubt that every mum or dad are trying to do the best they can for their kids and making the best choices with what they know because they've been told that healthy whole grains and low fat and whatever is the right thing to do. But when we know better, we can do better. So, I think these people throwing abuse at me, it probably just makes them feel a little bit insecure about the choices they're making because someone else is making a choice different to them. And so I learnt pretty early on in the piece that it says a lot more about them than it does about me. And if people are genuinely interested in me or, trying to add some healthier things into their kid's life, they can come over and follow me on Instagram and they can watch cooking videos with Grace and see that she actually loves this stuff. I get her involved in creating food. And the other day she came home and she said, oh, Mum, can I get a chocolate brownie from the tuck shop? And I was like, not a chance, mate.
Yeah.
But if you want to, we can make chocolate brownies.
Yeah.
She was like, okay, let's do that. So we made chocolate brownies at home. She's like, oh, these are the best.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, great. Mate, she grated up the zucchini that went in the chocolate brownies.
Yeah, wow.
That was completely undetectable. And I've given it to so many people and they're like, these are the best chocolate brownies. I'm like,
wow.
I know they are.
And so these recipes are where?
On my website.
Perfect.
And there's photos and everything on there too. They're absolutely amazing.
Now, I've got to work out the zucchini thing. I'm so sick of eating my kids' zucchinis. That's why. It's just like...
I hated zucchini when I was a kid too.
Because I hated avocado and I love it. And my kids love... But I don't think I ever tried it.
Yeah.
Because it was mushy green stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's texture.
Yeah.
And I think, your taste for texture and all that
it
sort of
changes.
stuff
That's
totally
why you've got to keep
does.
trying things. And
seasonally it changes.
So
like sometimes you
every
feel
kid's
like
different.
cold, fresh stuff and other times you feel like warm, cooked things.
Yeah, I get you.
like if any parents are out there, anyone's listening to this, like there is no right and wrong way. Everyone is different. And even if, that's why I wanted to give the example of my choice. So I've been natural about 20 years. 10 years developing food products for other companies, spent my whole life obsessed with this kind of industry, get to the point where I have my children's out of my genetics, and I've got my own personal experiences that I've learned from and where I've got mad at society for making me fat and all these sort of things. Now, I've got 2 kids, very similar. I can't work them out. They are so exact opposite. It's like this. So... there is no rule. I just showed you those things with the calories. The calories that they're saying from someone from the age of 5 through to 50, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And so this whole calories in, calories out, everything, there is no one way. There is no rules. So when someone says you've got to follow a food pyramid that suits everyone in the world, including the economy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, so I don't want anyone to think that there's any right or wrong ways.
No.
People need to get an understanding of what these things are too.
Yeah.
Like this whole obsession with grain. in particular wheats and things like. I mean,
bizarre.
how did they discover things like berry by giving people polished rice all the time? You've got to put this vitamins back in that we polished off the outside. You know what I mean? So there is no rules. No. And there is no one way. You can't criticise someone, and someone that might go well on a paleo, another person might go well on a low-fat, clean diet, and someone else might be full vegan. So there's all these different things.
Absolutely.
The pattern that I've noticed between unhealthy people, whether they're following the standard American or standard Australian diet, which the SAD diet, or whether they're following some sort of a extreme diet with a cool name, it's the people that eat a whole heap of processed crap that are sick.
Yeah, because I mean, you could be a whole food vegan where you're eating all the colours of the rainbow and fruits and veggies, or you could be a junk food vegan where you're eating
gluten
fake
shaped
sausages.
into a chicken drumstick.
Like, and I think at the end of the day, like you said, there is no one right way.
Yeah.
But if we think about it practically, you sit down to a bowl of vegetables and good quality protein and healthy fats, that is going to win out in the nutrition stakes over a bowl of pasta with cheese every single day of the week. So I'm not saying never eat pasta with cheese. Whatever. If that's your kid's favourite meal, then maybe that's Friday night favourites and let's do it.
But it's not actually food.
It's not. It's a food-like product.
Yeah. It's like
calories,
like
but
you
not
can do
food.
your cereal. So you imagine having your sugary cereals and your juices. I never forget growing up and that we were told to drink fruit juice. You've got to have juice every day, and you've got to have a glass of milk for your bones.
Yeah.
And you've got to have this juice. The juice wasn't even juice. It's not as if people were squeezing fruit into my cup.
Some
this
sort of
was
reconstituted.
a cordial. This was like a little cardboard carton that we then add water to make a 2-litre thing of cordial. And then, but it's
oranges,
fruit.
orange is a fruit, isn't it?
Yeah. You see what I
The
mean?
colour,
So, yeah, well, it is. You're right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, like we said before, don't let perfect get in the way of good. And, your kid at the moment might be addicted to Cocoa Pops or Wheat Bix for breakfast. If you want to transition them into something that has a little bit more nutrient density, then maybe we make, berry muffins for brekkie and make them on almond meal so they've got some healthy fats in there, and you've got some eggs in there for some protein. You could add some collagen powder in there, pop some grated apple in there, some cinnamon, sweeten it with raw honey. So it's still going to be something that's fun and delicious to eat, but it's probably got a shit ton more nutrition in there than a bowl of Wheat Bix, where that kid is going to probably be off their face on sugar for the next half an hour. They're going to get to school and they're going to be head down on the desk, so tired.
And it's important what you said before about looking at the ingredients for numbers and things like that, and not just numbers, just kind of have a look at it. And like I went through, for coconut milk, for example, I went through a few different brands of coconut milk, flipping around to find one that was actually coconut milk and water and not actually predominantly rice milk with a bit of coconut. Some of the ingredient lists on some of these things has got nothing to do with what's actually you think. So you see a product's called something, it may not even have that even in
Almond milk with 2% almonds.
Yeah. So what is this thing? Nut juice.
But to be honest, like I drink coconut milk at home in my coffee. I get a tin of coconut cream that is nothing but coconut extract and water. I put it into a big glass bottle. I put the coconut cream in. I top the rest with filtered water. I shake it up. You've got coconut milk. It's so cheap. And it's got nothing else in it.
And if you're using it relatively, if you're using it daily and those sort of things,
put it in your coffee, put it in your smoothies.
A great source of medium chain triglycerides, which are saturated fats, but they're good for you, saturated fats.
The good fats.
The good saturated fats.
And they're a great way to get extra calories into those kids. Those kids that, like you said, one of your boys is so lean and he's constantly on the burn. Those kids, you just want to get more calories and more nutrients in there. And an easy way to do that is with good quality fats. So, coconut milk in a smoothie, add a spoonful of like peanut butter or almond butter or something like that where they're getting some extra quality fats in there. It's going to help stabilize their mood as well. Great for their brain. And also then if you're adding fruit like bananas or whatever you're putting into the smoothie, it's going to help with that blood sugar regulation as well. They're not just going to get a massive blood sugar spike. they've got protein and fats in there to help balance that out for them as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Love
That is
it.
excellent. No?
It is. And, you know, there's lots of data now out on the Paleolithic
And
diet.
so what do we
which
do?
is
We
sort
do like these links to the webpage and stuff in the stuff that people do?
I'm sure we can.
Normally
Yes, we
adults take over.
Yeah.
They then go in and gather all of our stuff, and like Brooko, for example. And then we get links to your webpage so we can get all of your everything, all your content that you created, so we can get all these recipes, all these suggestions.
Yep, I've got ebooks on there as well. I think my first ebook was called CBF Paleo for people who really want to eat well but can't be fucked.
Ah, that's so cool.
Right, CBF. I was going to say, what's that?
That's
That's
5 ingredients all there. No, can't be fucked.
Yeah, okay.
can't
I
be
was
fucked.
trying to
That's
think of some
brilliant.
chemical name for
No,
that.
but it's all like
CBF
5
Paleo.
ingredients or less. And I think the important thing is you got to meet people where they're at. Like, you know, not everyone is a type A personality who's going to deep dive and go hardcore. And if you're talking about families and feeding kids, it's not realistic for people to just kind of go, okay, well, that's it. From tomorrow, there is no processed food in this house. There's no dairy. There's no grains. There's nothing. You've got to meet people where they're at and just slowly start to incorporate things that are a little bit more nutrient dense. So that might not mean cutting out the Wheat Bix if that's what your kid loves, but it might mean if they love a smoothie, you sneak a bit of zucchini in there.
Yeah.
And you're just adding
doing that.
little
That's
bits of
starting
nutrients.
tomorrow.
It's
I'm
so
gonna do that.
easy.
Beck does it already, my wife. So just
You
for those
didn't tell
people.
me that.
Oh, yeah, I'd tell you,
You're
don't
old
tell you
now.
lots of
It's
things
old
about
bloody
Beck.
time.
It's a
Beck
secret.
and I have
Yeah.
secrets, you know.
Oh, I hope you bloody do. I don't get stuff. Ugh. What, you're the predator?
I go to do that stuff with my wife. We're allowed to. We're married. Now, for those people on the treadmill now with their headphones on and Bluetoothing you, so in case they're not watching, what is your website that they can? If you got a catchy one, they can refer.
Yeah, it's myfoodreligion.com.
Myfoodreligion.com. I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, then they can look you up from there and check you out from there.
Yep, absolutely.
I was just thinking, you said that. What did we say before? No, that we had that precision nutrition dude again.
Oh, yeah.
One of the most interesting stats he said, which was fascinating, is they went and analysed. They had 200,000 people complete a thing for 12 months and collected the data.
Mm-hmm.
He found the people that got the best results were actually introverts, not extroverts, which I thought was fascinating. But the best thing was they actually analysed the level of success you got from different levels of compliance. The 80 to 100% compliance, of course, got the best results. But there's bugger all difference between the people that were in the 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80.
Yeah.
So doing something is better than doing nothing.
And
So,
consistency. You know, I think it's creating consistency, which creates a habit.
yeah,
So I wouldn't say I'm on a paleo diet.
yeah.
I just eat a whole foods diet. And initially, yes, I was on a paleo diet because that's what served me at the time.
Yeah.
But I think you got to work out what works for you and what can you incorporate into a lifestyle so that it's sustainable. So, you know, it doesn't matter if all you can manage this week is sneaking a bit of zucchini into your kid's smoothie a couple of times a week. That's great because if you are consistent with that, that's adding nutrition.
Yep.
Next month, you might kind of go, okay, we're going to try and swap the white pasta for like, I don't know, whole grain pasta or buckwheat pasta or something else that when I cover it in sauce, they are not going to know what it is. So that might be the next step. It's just making small incremental changes, but being consistent with it over time. And it's the same with introducing new foods to kids. You just have to be consistent with it and keep putting new things on their plate and give them the opportunity to try it.
Yep.
And like I said before, you choose what, they choose how much and if. So you keep putting stuff on their plate, but let's be honest, if you put down a plate of pasta and cheese and then some vegetables on the side, they are not going near those vegetables. So, you know, in that instance, ideally the plate's going to have some good quality protein on there. And yes, maybe it has some carbohydrates in the form of rice or pasta or whatever, but that shouldn't be the main part of the plate. That should be a condiment to the vegetables and the good quality protein, so that if that's the thing they choose to eat, there's not that much of it and they're still going to be hungry and they're probably going to try some of the other stuff that's on the plate.
Wow.
That's
Awesome
really
tips.
good.
We could talk all day about tips. There's so many. I mean, we've got to have you back, I reckon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we should do more.
Yeah.
I want to talk about all your sticky food theory and everything, but we'll do that another time. He said sticky foods.
Sticky foods.
So he's got foods that are bad because other things stick to them.
Yes.
Like bread's bad because I eat too much butter.
Yeah,
Well,
that's sort of stuff.
butter's
Or
bad
dairy's
because I eat
bad
too
because
much
you end
bread.
up putting on your cereal or Cocoa Pops or something like that.
Yeah.
It's sticky foods.
It's a shit theory, actually, Steve. I don't think we bother. Just kind of, I could hear everyone just kind of sat here, guess, going, that's crap.
You know what they say. Broccoli's bad because it sticks in your teeth, but Wheat Bix are bad because they stick to your ass. You know, that's the other sticky food. It's probably a bit, I don't know, G-rated or whatever. I don't know. I've got someone in trouble for that. But that's the other sticky food side of things.
Well, Uncle Toby's will be upset at you about that.
Yeah, I've just upset a pop. Well, Shannon and Shan, it's been terrific to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
I called you Shannon, you like Shan.
It's fine.
It's all good.
Either or.
Yeah, both of you.
Both my
Thanks
names.
to both of you.
Yeah, it's both of you. And thanks for sharing the story about Grace.
Okay.
I prefer Shannon on. Next time we're doing Shannon on.
That's right.
Fine.
And the story about Grace is amazing. And I'm sort of...
Oh, sorry. I almost broke into song then. The Amazing Grace.
Oh, so funny.
I didn't even think of that. But Grace's story is amazing, but it really isn't. It should be normal, shouldn't it? It should be that's what healthy kids should all eat. And the unusual story should be the one where the child's brought up on McDonald's only.
Absolutely. You know? And you know what? I think if we start them off on healthy food and get them to understand what healthy food is and how food makes them feel, because that's the important thing, isn't it? We eat really good quality healthy food and we feel good. If we go to a party and we eat a shit ton of junk and we drink too much booze and we feel pretty shitty the next day, as adults, so I think we get to a point where that becomes our normal. If we educate kids from a really young age about you eat good food and you feel good, when you go to a kid's party and you get jacked up on sugar, you feel pretty ordinary and, you know, they probably won't do it again.
Well, it's been amazing having you here, Shannon. And
Thanks for
we've
having
got
me,
to have you
guys.
back because there's so much of this story about what kids eat and how to get them to eat. And your challenges are pretty amazing too. You've got 2 kids of your own and you've talked about that. It's an incredible, difficult job. I've dodged that bullet. I haven't got any kids, so it's fascinating hearing all about it.
Yeah. I think it's about, you just got to try different things and see what sticks.
Yep.
Well, let's do a follow-up because I'm going to make some of these changes and then we're going to see and I'm going to have a whole heap more questions then. And then I'll probably come up with some pretty amazing recipes that you're going to probably want because I am a bit like that. Yeah.
Awesome.
I can't wait.
All right. Well, thanks again and thanks everyone for listening and have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.